Welcome to your nooner or good morning. You may be out there where it's not afternoon yet. I'm Dave LaMont, and it's back to the Monday schedule today. I like doing this show on Mondays and Fridays because there's stuff you either go into the weekend with or stuff you pick up on the weekend. And man, have we picked up stuff just today that has gotten very interesting in sports. And sadly, here we go one more time, virusing our way through another edition of this program, but you just can't help it. Just about an hour ago, I saw a tweet from the great Jason Sobel, and Jason mentioning for golf fans, there will be no fans at any PGA Tour events for the remainder of this year. Now, that excludes the Masters, which is run by the Masters, and it excludes the U.S. Open, which is run by the U.S. Golf Association. But, and this is no surprise at all, the tour was kind of hanging on by a thread there for a little bit, but it appears they've gotten through this last tournament without any positive tests for any players or any caddies, so they survived that. So you got that going for us, which is nice, to use a golf term. College football. With the announcement, the Patriot League, by the way, which again is a smaller FCS league, is wiping out all fall sports. And that's no surprise. We knew as soon as the Ivy League did that the Patriot League and these other smaller leagues, so-called smaller leagues, I don't mean to demean them, would fall. But you may have seen over the weekend that the Big Ten is going to conference play only. I believe the Pac-12 is going to conference play only as well, which eliminates some headline matchups for sure for the sport that would have been nice to sort of fall back on and relax to. But again, we don't have that luxury to fall back and relax on anything right now. So that means I'm almost certain the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 will go with them. And what this does is it buys time to help try to figure out how to execute a season. It doesn't look like we're going to have too many universities with a full-on campus crowd. It looks like there's going to be an option to attend class in person or to online, maybe a little combination of both. But as far as the classic 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people on campus or 8,000 people on campus experience, it's not going to happen. And some athletic directors, even a couple of months ago, were saying, hey, we're not going to get any football, any fans in stands if we can't have a full-on campus experience. Well, they've kind of backed away from that a little bit, but nevertheless. Now, grabbing a Sunday paper, I'm still in Central Florida, about to head home, but I did read it was Mike Bianchi in the Orlando Sentinel who had an interview with Jeremy Foley, the former Florida Gators athletic director, and he asked, well, what do you think might happen to Florida State? That game isn't scheduled till November 28th, but it is a non-conference game. By November 28th, are we going to be the same, better, or worse? I can't make that prediction on July 13th. I wouldn't even dare. So there's a game that's going to be threatened. And just looking at Florida State, they're supposed to play West Virginia on the 5th. They're supposed to play Boise State on the 19th. I have to believe that conferences like the Mountain West and the American Conference, who are I hate it when we say they're below the Power Five, but they are. They may also have to fall in line because you're losing games. And I know we've talked about money and about this many, many times, but the cancellation of these non-conference games is really going to whack the pocketbooks of smaller schools. You probably are very aware of the money games, the games that are played when, a smaller school, and the quote I saw was from New Mexico State, so I'll use them as a perfect example because I did one of their games they played in Texas against the Longhorns, who predictably beat them. But they're paid well. I mean, schools pay anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, maybe even more than $1 million to the budgets of these other universities. So that's why you're wondering, why on earth does Florida A&M play Miami? It's not just, because Florida A&M is a Florida-based school and does have a big alum base in the state. It's because they will get a nice check from UM. Well, these games are going away. So here's a big budgetary blast. Here's $750,000, $800,000, whatever it was going to be, that you're not getting in your budget. When I was with FAU in the early days, and FAU still takes these pay games, Oklahoma, Ohio State. I remember going to Gainesville when Tim Tebow was still playing with the Gators, and we did a play for pay game because they're good for your budget. You got to do it. And these games are going away. So what do you think? I mean, I only took one economics class in college. Even I can figure this out. So the ripple effect is underway. We talked Friday about Stanford losing 11 varsity sports, and while they weren't major sports and they weren't sports that everybody gathered around the TV to watch, that matters. It mattered to the athletes, the men and the women who had their sports taken away from them through no fault of their own. I don't blame the conferences for cutting back. I like the idea of them buying time. But I'm still highly unclear. Even the SEC commissioner, Sankey, talked about the politicization, the politics behind mask wearing and how it's gotten to the point where it's affecting the colleges and the college sports. And I'm not going to get into the politics of mask wearing other than to say that I do wear a mask when it is needed, and I do so willingly. And I urge you to do the same. But if you're not into that, that's your business. But I'm just telling you a little bit about mine. Then you read, this wasn't in the Dallas Morning News or the Houston paper, but then you read that Texas high school football may not happen in 2020. That's a revenue raiser, too. I'm sure you have heard about it, read about it, maybe seen photos of the stadiums that are out there. It's a significant part of the state of Texas's personality, and I don't think that's an exaggeration to say that at all. And if you don't have Texas high school football, then that's going to have a massive effect on that state, and it's going to have an effect on college football, because unlike basketball, which could lean on the AAU a little bit, you don't have an AAU in football. You can't keep sending these kids out there to get beat up. So recruiting is going to change. You're going to see young men's senior seasons go by the boards. I don't know if you can play in the spring, and a point that I never even thought of was brought up about the people who think that you could play college football next spring and then tee it right up again in the fall. I know these are young people we're talking about, and you think their bodies heal quickly, but the players need time off. They need time off to build back muscle. They need time off to rest. They need time off to get their bodies back right for what they're about to go again. And even young bodies need that time off. And here's another problem with sports in the spring for football. Remember, the odds of a college football player ever making a penny as a professional are very, very long. So a lot of these student athletes really need to be students. And when do you graduate? Most of the time in the spring, sometimes in December. So a lot of that time in the spring, after they have spent all those hours practicing, working out, preparing, all of the team activities, the travel, the games, then the rest of that time, that senior year, needs to be spent on getting your degree or getting ready to prepare for whatever your next level of education is going to be if you're going to go on and try to get a master's or a doctorate. Football players do that. I know there's an image of a bunch of dumb jocks running around, but that's not really the case. So you're telling me that at a peak time in their education, when many of them are preparing for graduation, you're going to ask a senior to become a full-time college football player in the last 2 months of his college life? I don't know if that's realistic either. So all of this, and I know I'm sick of the term uncharted territory, but we are in a place we've never thought in our whole lives we'd ever be in and don't want to be in. And my overdeveloped sense of fairness kicks in, and how unfair this is to these men and women who are losing these opportunities, how unfair it is to the people who work at universities who may lose their jobs in sports athletics, in administration, people from sports information people, down to athletic directors, down to trainers, to volunteers. All of them could lose jobs. And in my industry, people are going to be losing jobs. And in a lot of cases, people you're not really familiar with because you don't see them on the air. But to do a football game takes dozens and sometimes more than dozens of people, depending on the scope of the game. And they're all going to be in trouble. That stuff just doesn't happen when the announcers show up a couple of hours before the game and slap on the makeup and make sure everything is straight. It happens 2 days, 3 days out in some cases. Those are jobs that could be lost, and lost for good, or at least lost to the point where there's great economic damage done to them. It's an awful situation, and there's no getting better in sight. So I hate to be all, Dave the Downer about all of this, but that's what we're looking at right now. And I hope it doesn't happen this way. I hope it doesn't get any worse than we just cancel non-conference games, and maybe we can get our 7 or 8 games in and still somehow figure out how on earth we're going to get a champion out of all of this. Think about that. So I go on from this to something that we talked about a week ago, and I think maybe more than once. It certainly looks like we're going to get, not certainly, we are going to get a new name for the NFL team in Washington. Odds are, from the articles I've read, the Warriors seems to be the favorite. It was a name that the owner of the Washington team, Dan Snyder, had thought about when he was looking to get into the Arena Football League. And to be safe, I looked up the meaning of warrior earlier this morning. The first definition that popped up was brave or experienced soldier or fighter. Now, that certainly does not seem to be anything derogatory or anything mean-spirited, anything about that. So I would think that warriors would be safe. Would you like to know the second definition of warriors? According to what I read this morning, the second definition, of course, and I think we all knew this, was any number of standing poses in yoga in which the legs are held apart and the arms are stretched outward. Pardon my voice. This is what happens when you don't broadcast. And when you talk for 10, 15 minutes at a time, you start to lose your voice. Weirdest thing in the world. And unfortunately, I don't have anything to drink nearby, so we will try to get through this together. So, pardon me again. Between the first two definitions of the word warriors, I think we're going to be all right. I really do. I think we're going to be okay. And it's a great name. And it's about time. And this morning, again, this cursory going through the socials, there's folks who are mad about this, and I don't know why. I don't. Why do you care so much? I have to admit, I'm puzzled by that. It's just a name change. And by the way, it's not like we're changing. I understand the name had been there for decades upon decades upon decades, and the franchise at one time was one of the most successful in the NFL, which it currently is not, and it may one day be again. But at the moment, let's be realistic, it ain't. And I don't know. It's interesting to me that people are upset about that. Very, very interesting. But I can't control everything, that's for darn sure. So there you have it, the Washington Warriors. It's about time. And I can tell you as a fan of the team, this was the first team I probably ever fell in love with as a child. I'm happy about it. I haven't been able to wear that team's gear for years because I'm embarrassed about it. I never felt right about that. And I just got a bottle of water from my stage manager, so give me just a second here to rehydrate it. Plus, it's brutal out here, as you might guess, anywhere in Central Florida, where the word breeze is not in the dictionary. Played golf yesterday up here. 103 was the felt-like temperature. Anyway, I stopped wearing the gear. I felt it was insulting to some people, and I just couldn't do it. And you might think that's not manly enough. That's too bad. That's how I felt. So I'm delighted the name is going to be changing. I think I'm all for keeping the burgundy and gold and all of that stuff. Maybe they can rewrite the fight song, and you can just change the hashtag to HTTW instead of HTTR like it was. That's what I'm hoping for. But in the meantime, we deal with what we have, and it's a change, and it's a badly needed change. All right, now, earlier today, when I wrote a little reminder to you guys about that I was going to talk about something that you never thought I would ever talk about, here it comes. Over the weekend, I watched Hamilton on Disney+. Do you know Disney paid $75 million to get that? And the subscriptions, of course, went at least for a little while. I don't know, people will unsubscribe. That's, again, their business. But I got to tell you, it's unbelievable. It is really, really good. And I'm not a big Broadway lover. I can't, I think the last time I was ever at a Broadway theater show was in the 90s. I'm not a big musicals guy because I've always thought it was kind of odd for people just to be walking around and instead of speaking, they sing. Like I never got into Glee or what was the other one? Oh, Fame, where everything was a song. You'd have like a line of dialogue and then all of a sudden everybody starts singing. Well, this was pretty much what Hamilton was, but damn, it's really good. A lot of you may have seen it already. Some of you may have even seen it in person, maybe even with the original cast when it was the hardest ticket to get, I think, in the history of Broadway. But I can't recommend it enough. Soundtrack is great, music's great, pacing's great. The talent, now this was the original cast from a show a few years ago in New York. It's phenomenal. I got to tell you, I was transfixed by it was 2.5 hours with a little bit of a break. We took a little break to walk the dogs. Absolutely a phenomenal show. And now I understand the hype because people would, it's one of those things where I've never heard anybody say anything bad about it. So in my tiny brain, sometimes that makes me suspicious. And then you have to go, well, I got to try this sucker out for myself. So I tried this sucker out for myself, and I got to say, it was outstanding. So I try to keep you a little bit off on your toes here, or off your toes, on Nooner with Dave. And yeah, this is that's the off the toes comment there. That yes, I saw Hamilton over the weekend on Saturday night. Yeah, and it was great. It was truly great. So get your Disney Plus subscription if you haven't already, and please do yourself a favor. Take a couple hours and watch that. It was absolutely great. So one more thing that I thought I would start doing, because when you make a living with language, and I don't write that much. I'm not really a writer, although I'd love to do that someday. You hear expressions that just are terrible. There's no other word for it. Just redundant, unnecessary. So I think I'm going to start doing this every show until I just run out of ideas. I'm going to call this expressions we must lose. Things we must stop saying because they don't make us sound as smart as we think we are. One of the things I tell my students about asking a question when you're interviewing somebody is don't take a minute to set up the question just to show how smart you are and how much you've researched your question. And by the way, I say that strictly from the guy who's done it before. I've interviewed people and I give the 45 seconds. So, we look back at the situation involving you and we realize, and you just go on, and you know what the person is thinking. There's a question incoming somewhere. Where is it? So this is kind of the same thing. Sometimes we want to appear smarter than we really are. So here's number one of expressions that I think we must lose from the English language. And it made me, this word came up, this expression came up because we were talking about the NFL and the Washington franchise and how it's the seventh most valuable franchise. This is a losing team. Seventh most valuable franchise in the National Football League, worth over $3 billion. Right now, one of you is waiting for me to say billions with a B. And that is expression number one of expressions that need to go take a hike. Because have you ever said millions with an M? Did you ever say, oh, that was $1,000. Thousand with a T. 100 with an H. P for penny. N for nickel. D dime. And so on? I think not. So whomever came up with the idea that billions with a B made it sound even more spectacular is obviously not somebody with $1 billion or $1 billion business. Because billionaires don't have to do that. So to me, billions with a B is one of the most, it's cringeworthy. Even now, my stomach is flopping a bit thinking about it. So let's drop that one, shall we? If you ever talk about something that so-and-so, Bill Gates is a billionaire, billion with a B. That's like saying Bill with a B or Gates with a G. We get it. That person or that corporation is well off. You don't have to keep saying it. Billions is enough. It's not that that's a word that you can't understand. It's not like trying to figure out the lyrics to Blinded by the Light that Springsteen wrote and the Manfred Mann Band made a hit of, one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my life. And we all know what that one line is that we think it is, but we know it's not, but it still sounds like it. There's a lot of that in music. Excuse me while I kiss the skies, to some people sounds like excuse me while I kiss this guy. But billions sounds like billions, period. So let's work together on this. Let's link arms. Let's grab hands and stand in solidarity that expression that we must lose number one, and there will be a series of these. There's going to be another one on Friday, I promise you, that we will go ahead and ban it from our everyday conversation. Are we good on that? Excellent. And that's really, amazingly, I'm out of material. I covered everything. I was surprised at that. So the next best thing for me to do is hit the road and head on home. But I do want to thank everybody and remind you about my YouTube channel. I'm getting perilously close to 100 with an H and subscribers. And I think at that point I receive a check for like $20,000 from YouTube. I'm being told that's not right. But anyway, I do appreciate all of you who have gone to the YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. This broadcast always stays up on Facebook Live, so I know a few people always say, well, I can't be there at 12 o'clock or whatever time that they like to watch it at. And I say, well, that doesn't matter. It's always fun to watch it live, but you can always watch it anytime you'd like on a Facebook Live. But I do appreciate the positive comments. The negative ones, not so much. But no, seriously, I thank all of you for sticking with me and for being very supportive and very kind, and for watching. It means a lot. It's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this. It gives me adrenaline to last the day. And I'm about to embark on one of the world's most boring tasks, the drive from Orlando to Broward County on the rarely exciting Florida Turnpike, the less stress way, which hopefully it will live up to that name today. So again, thank you very much for your time. One more thing I just want to mention. This has been bugging me for a little while. I know this has been a very difficult time for a lot of people. A lot of people have lost jobs. A lot of people have lost money. A lot of people have had events canceled they were looking forward to. A lot of you have stress to deal with work, stress with school. We got people who are wondering, what are we going to do about my children going to school? Can they go back to school? What if I'm a teacher? There's a lot of stress and depression. And all I'm saying is just a little bit of advice. Don't let it get to you to the point where you don't seek professional help or the help of your friends and family and loved ones. So please do that. Don't make this any worse on yourself. You don't have to. There are a lot of people who would be happy to help you. That'll do it. Thank you all for your comments in there. I'm now understand I may have to expect a check for 20 cents if I get to 100. So, and I will spend that in one place. I'll be back Friday at noon Eastern, 11 in the Dallas Metroplex, 10 o'clock in Laramie, Wyoming, 9 o'clock in Sacramento, and 6 a.m. at Duke's in Honolulu. I'm Dave LaMont. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you Friday.